Welcome, Pensar basketball community, and today we're going to be talking about OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. It is no secret that the Raptors have a bit of a cap situation on their hands, and they have to choose between two of their better players, two of their starting forwards, and we're going to talk about some realistic Pascal Siakam trades that could make sense for this team. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons of keeping one or the other, potentially shipping out both. I don't want to entertain that possibility, but it's definitely in the realm of possibilities with where, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster want to take this team. First, while we let this chat populate, let's hit that intro. All right. How you like that? That was good, right?
When you fake like that, head out of the game, I don't take that fact. Won't you let me go? No, you never come back. I'ma be the best that you never had. I'ma keep, 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 I'ma be the best that you never had. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. I don't flex, I'm success. 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 Effortless, see ya. I'ma keep, 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 I'ma be the best that you never had. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, no you want it. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, I'm like a rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, see I got it. Rumpa pa pa, rumpa pa pa, no you want it. Want it, want it, want it, want it.
All right. Let me present this in as less, I don't know, as unbiased a perspective as I possibly can. The Raptors have a bit of a situation on their hands. If you haven't heard, there's a bit of an expensive roster situation, and the roster is kind of mid, right? To a lot of people, this is not the type of roster you go all in on. You don't go into the tax. The Raptors have never really shown the willingness to, and MLSC has never really shown the willingness to go into the tax for a non-contender. Now, it kind of leaves a situation. You have a clear option, which is let Gary Trent Jr. walk for nothing, right? You're not really going to be able to negotiate much of a sign and trade. I'm not really sure what his market is out there. And in any sign and trade situation, as we've discussed ad nauseum on this channel before, you're going to have to take some sort of salary back. Who's giving you something of value, like a young prospect, someone who has the cap space to outright sign him? And he's also a very valuable player in a lot of ways. He has a very valuable skill set. We've seen isolation scorers. He is, you guys might not believe this, but Gary Trent Jr. is your most efficient clutch scorer. He has shown time and time again, he has shown a bit of a growth in his game. His defense took a step back. It went from bad to worse to even worse. And quite frankly, we saw a little bit of an uptick in his defensive intensity the previous year, where everyone was saying he's a good defender now. He's not a good defender. But how many teams out there are running out 5 good defenders all the time? A lot of teams are able to mask, defensive liabilities, especially ones who are willing to at least try on defense. Gary Trent Jr. isn't just mailing it out on defense. He's just not a very gifted defender. He's not going to be able to, at his maximum, give you what Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, or OG Anunoby can give you. That doesn't mean he can't play on your team. Doesn't mean that you can't hide him. It doesn't mean the right coach won't be able to use him a lot better than the previous coach did. And I think that for a team starved of talent at times, youth, upside, scoring, three-point shooting, Gary Trent Jr. gives you a lot of what you theoretically were missing last year. It's hard to imagine where you might have been without him. So let Fred VanVleet walk. Well, I'll show you a quick little graphic in terms of why that might not be as great an idea as possible. Sorry, I'm just going to tease there. Here we go. So here's your overall Raptor per 538. Rest in peace, 538. I believe they're going out. But just to look at it from this perspective, you know, yeah, we can argue this is highly overrated. We can also argue that he totally stat padded, that he was in a position that he probably shouldn't have been in. But it's hard to argue that he wasn't one of your top 2 or 3 best players last year. Like, really hard to make that argument. And I'm his biggest detractor. It's not easy for me to just argue. I can argue he was used completely incorrectly. I can definitely argue he's not worth 36 or $35 million, even $30 million. I can argue that he will regress on his next contract, most likely, as many undersized guards have. But next year and the year after, when you actually do need to be good, you don't have a pick. It's hard to imagine just losing him for nothing and not taking a massive step back in some regard, especially if what's replacing him is a 13th overall pick or a rookie that is very unlikely to contribute to winning next year. So, okay, so you sign Fred and you hold on to the asset and hope that he doesn't decline, and so you can trade him later. You're still facing a bit of a sticky cap situation, and that's where the OG and the OG and Pascal thing comes in, right? You got to move one of these guys. Now, I'll give you a reason why I don't want to move OG. Partially is because he's the younger, more portable player. I think he fits better with Scotty. I think he genuinely has a more of a positive impact on the defensive end. I think even if Pascal Siakam were to find some of his lost rigor on defense, you know, hey guys, 4 years ago, we were talking about Pascal Siakam as the next Scottie Pippen. We were talking about him as an all-league defender, potentially a first-team all-defense guy. The things that he was able to do, even in the bubble where he was pretty much a train wreck on offense, shooting horribly, turning the ball over, he was still a very competent defender. Actually, as a bit of a, I don't know, blast from the past, just a couple of days ago, I watched the entire Boston series against the Raptors in the bubble. It was a fantastic watch. It was amazing to see who Nick Nurse was back then. It was amazing to see what this team played like back then. And it's really hard to imagine just a few years later how much of that has been lost. Yeah, you lose Marc Gasol, you lose Serge Ibaka, you lose Kyle Lowry. Obviously, that's going to impact. But Marc Gasol was very washed. Serge Ibaka was not one of the top 7 players on that team. And Kyle Lowry probably was on his last legs. So if you can't replace that, right? And in theory, all these young kids, who were coming up around them, they were playing major minutes. Fred VanVleet, who can forget Game 7, taking that shot over Grant Williams? Who can forget that terrible shot and how it would become such a metaphor for what was to come for the Raptors after the bubble? But I think it's worth noting that a lot of the players that are currently part of your core were playing major minutes for effectively the best Raptor team in NBA history, or in Raptor history. Granted, you didn't have Kawhi. Granted, Marc Gasol was old. He was overweight. He didn't look like himself. He couldn't make a shot to save his life. You really telling me Jakob Poeltl is worse than that version of Marc Gasol? Not really. So, in theory, you should be able to build a competent roster around most of these pieces. Have they changed that materially, or did the system change? Did they change their mind about what type of role they're willing to play? Did their buy-in on defense change? Or, as I have accused, did the entire vibe of this team and the chemistry change? It's interesting to watch how good OG Anunoby was that year. And it got me thinking, if he can get back to a lot of what was making him so great back then, focus a little less on the isolation scoring stuff, he can still have his numbers. He can still put up 22, 23 points per game and be an excellent role player. Every player doesn't have to try to morph into Kawhi Leonard. At some point, you're going to have to accept who you are as a player and just buy into that. And I think he will. I think if he's in a more egalitarian offense in which things are kind of flowing more his way, there's a little bit more ball movement, a little less selfishness, I think he could easily move into that direction and buy into his role more than he has perhaps over the last year, where there's been rumors of him being disgruntled. But I think it's also, if I can make a case that Fred VanVleet was definitely one of your top 3-4 players last year, easily, I can definitely make a case that OG Anunoby was definitely one of your top 3-4 players. You could also make a case, of course, and rightfully so, that Pascal Siakam was one of your top 3 to 4 players. So if you want to bring all 3 of them back, you're getting rid of something that you probably don't want to get rid of. If you're choosing between 2, honestly, I think you move Pascal. Let me make the case for OG. Okay, so here's a little bit of a snapshot on who OG Anunoby is as a player and who he's been, right? I'm going to just say that watching the playoffs, watching, the Milwaukee Bucks, watching the Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors, I'm just getting a very new appreciation. I guess I watched too much Raptors basketball, and now that I don't have to watch Raptors basketball, I'm just free to watch EuroLeague. I'm free to watch other basketball teams. And every single team I watch, I ask myself a question. Could OG Anunoby make this team better? And in every single situation, I have always said, absolutely 100%. He takes almost any decent team into title contention automatically. So, there's a reason why his trade value is so high. There's absolutely a reason why he's worth 3 first-round picks for most people. So if he's worth 3 first-round picks for most people, why not just keep him? He's obviously worth that for a good reason. He fills a very valuable role. And I think the best thing to look into is just the crafted defensive plus minus. I don't think this defensive plus minus stat and most box plus minus stats look into the complexity of your role enough, and they should. And OG Anunoby, for his part, had the hardest defensive assignment in the NBA. There is no player in the league, not Defensive Player of the Year Jaren Jackson, not Defensive Player of the Year runner-ups Brooke Lopez and Evan Mobley. None of these guys did what OG Anunoby did. It's funny because I heard Bam Adebayo make a case for himself as Defensive Player of the Year, and he talks about guarding 1 through 5. He doesn't guard 1 through 5 the way OG Anunoby guards 1 through 5. He guards 1 through 5, but not like OG. OG is a plug-and-play guy. He can give you 20 points, and he can shut down the offensive superstar on the other team, especially if he's vibing right. He can shut down the side of the floor if he is with competent defenders. Far too often this year, I found that he was flanking a very weak set of defenders, whether it was sharing minutes with with Gary Trent Jr., whether it was sharing minutes with a sometimes injured Scotty Barnes who struggled to navigate around screens. I mean, I said he was a great defender. I didn't say he was the best defender in NBA history and he can make up for, everyone around him. But he cleans up so much, man. I watched that bubble playoff matchup when Nick Nurse went small. You know who was the center? OG Anunoby. When Jason Tatum got hot, who went on him? OG Anunoby. If Jaylen Brown started cooking, Nick Nurse. Hey, OG, get him. It's crazy what he can do on the basketball court. And I genuinely believe that his offense is coming. I'm not saying he's going to be Kawhi. I'm not saying he's going to be Scottie Pippen. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. But this dude's an all-star, man. He is absolutely an all-star. If Jaren Jackson Jr. is an all-star, OG Anunoby is an all-star. 100%. You don't let this guy go. So why would you let him go? I mean, seriously, I think it comes down to this, right? This is the DeJounte problem. So OG Anunoby's last contract was so team-friendly that it has severely handicapped the Raptors in their bid to offer him an extension. Under the new CBA, which I believe will kick in when he's still eligible, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's 140%. Still not enough to give him what he wants. And I think this can present certain problems. Now, if you're under the cap, as per my understanding, and I'm not pretending to be, the cap scientist of the world, and I honestly, I wish I had 20 minutes before this live, a little bit more time to just dig into this a little bit more. But as per my understanding of this, if the team is significantly under the cap, which the Raptors are not, they would be able to do something close to what the Indiana Pacers did with Miles Turner, in which case they would be able to flip up the contract value so that you extend sort of certain amount of money from the future value of subsequent contract into a current year. Indiana was going to get, I think they were going to get penalized for being too far under the cap, and so they just gave that money to Miles Turner, and then they signed him to an extension. So you could potentially do that. It's called a renegotiate and sign, but you're not under the cap. So the most likely situation would be you have to let him go into unrestricted free agency and sign a new contract, at which point you'll be one of the teams that can sign him, but you have no assurances that he might not leave. I'm 99% sure this is how this works. So you might do what the Spurs did with DeJounte Murray, where they just traded him. And they got multiple first-round picks back from the Atlanta Hawks. Or you can talk to him and have a serious conversation about his future. So, shake on it. He's talked about it openly, that he loves being in Toronto. He loves playing with Scottie Barnes. It's his favorite teammate. And if you can give him something close to what he wants, I think, why wouldn't he want to stay? Why wouldn't he want to extend his career? I have no reason to believe that. You don't want to, however, be in a situation where you're at the trade deadline and suddenly he changes his mind. It's happened before. I don't think it'll happen with him, but it has happened before. And then suddenly you're losing him for nothing as an unrestricted free agent. I don't think you want to end up in that situation if you're the Raptors, especially if you take the route of trading Pascal Siakam in order to free up the space future-wise to get him. Now, worth noting, if the Raptors were to sign OG to an extension, it would be this October. That's if he's extension eligible this October. It's also when Pascal is extension eligible. And I think that it will be difficult for this team to imagine a situation where they're willing to go into tax territory this year, and they will be in tax territory this year if they bring back Jakob Poeltl, Fred VanVleet, and Gary Trent Jr. 100%. Another reason why I would really like to bring OG back is just how he fits with the current pieces. We got a taste of Pascal less ball this year. Granted, not a lot. And granted, there were other guys who were struggling through that. Scottie Barnes was coming back from an injury. I don't think you actually got a full taste of what this team can look like without Pascal Siakam. Obviously, I'm not going to make a case here that this team is better off without Pascal Siakam. That would be ridiculous. He is a very good player. However, on his next contract, whether that be a supermax or a max contract, I believe he will underperform that contract significantly, especially because I don't even think, genuinely speaking, in terms of impact on winning, that he's the best player on the team right now. And I don't think he will be next year. His fit with Scottie is a little bit awkward. Let me show you what I mean. So this is OG Anunoby's shot chart. Every single place that you see no color, that's pretty much where Scottie lives. Mid-range, mid-post, pinch post, driving lanes. OG Anunoby and Scottie Barnes have what I call like natural synergy on the basketball court. The numbers don't always back it up, but I think Fred does as well. I think Fred and OG, Fred and Scottie, I think everyone other than Scottie and Pascal have a sort of natural flow and energy to them. It's not to say that Siakam and Barnes have not participated in a very good stretch of basketball for this team. They have. They were two of the starters on the team that led this team back from 0-3 against Philadelphia 76ers. They both played well almost at the same time to end off the previous season as the Raptors made that big run after trading for Thaddeus Young. But you have to wonder why we didn't see much of that this year, why it seemed like they were always kind of getting each other's way. And while having two, switchable, long, shot maker types, advanced playmakers, although I would, argue Pascal's a very good playmaker. If he can buy in on defense, man, he's a hell of a player, and it's a hell of an asset to move out. But when you look at his shot chart, you just see all the ways in which he interferes with everyone else's place on the court. And if he's not a superstar, then this shot chart is a mess, right? If he is a superstar, which is to say, if he's in the Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum category of at least, he can make, if he can up his, I don't know, if you see a sports psychologist and up his playoff performances and up his fourth quarter scoring, create a better diet of shots. If there's a coach out there who feels like, hey, I'm one conversation away from converting this guy's mindset and unlocking a better player, and he's certainly talented enough to do it. He's certainly skilled enough to do it. I just don't think that very often last year he was put in positions to be good. I mean, let me know if you guys, sorry, there's 120 comments. I'm not really paying attention to the comments. I'm just trying to talk. I promise I'll go through all the comments. Let me know if you guys watched the Heat versus the Bucks Do you remember Giannis over and over and over? And it's like every single. I swear to God, I was watching it and I was getting deja vu. I was getting deja vu. I'm like, this is the Raptors offense. And instead of Giannis, who can put up 38 and whatever, 20 rebounds, you had Pascal Siakam. You know, it's very hard to score in the NBA when your offense is so primitive and it's such a free for all. You know, Thinking Basketball had a video on that bubble series and they talked about Pascal Siakam's struggles and they said he's just not talented enough to go up against really good defenders as an isolation scorer. I firmly agree with this. I firmly agree with it. Whenever you encounter a team that has someone long enough, switchable enough, and frankly big enough to stay with him, and if you can send a soft double, like he's going to struggle as an isolation scorer. So this entire shot chart is that of a star. Like it's a superstar shot chart. I guarantee you if I showed you Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, it would look a lot like this. That's the problem. Too much self-generation for a guy who frankly isn't that great a creator. He will put up the big numbers, but it's going to be at a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is going to be efficiency. Take a look at Pascal Siakam a little bit deeper, right? So he's going to get a lot of plus points in the advanced stats department for his creation and load, right? Because the advanced stats assume that if you're taking such a large load on offense, someone must be allowing you to do so. But you want to look at that value replacement at the top right corner as it's sort of flatlined. Like the last couple of years, I mean, some people would argue he had the best season of the year last year. The stats say otherwise. The stats say this might just be a flat line, that the last 2 years are kind of like where he's at. His shot quality went down significantly this year, went right back down to almost his rookie of the year levels. I mean, yeah, sure, his box creation estimate is up, his offensive load is up, but this is a mistake. An offensive load of 47.6 is too high. And look at that passer rating going up, up, up. Look at the shot quality going down, right? You're giving him too much responsibility on offense and is really starting to tank his value. He would thrive in a situation with a primary creator to give him more of a breath in terms of just giving him a breath on things that he can't really do that well. And if you think that he can create, 28 to 35 shots a night, you're wrong. He just can't. Not good ones, at least. He doesn't see the court well enough to do that. I was revisiting my ranking every Raptor from the preseason, and it was like I ranked 20 Raptors, and I had him number one, but I spent all the time talking about why he wasn't a top 5, top 10 player. And it always came down to that. He doesn't create enough space, does not see the game well enough, and if you're going to max him out at a significant upgrade, I really don't think, I know it's hard for people to grasp this mentally, but when you consider the age gap between him and OG, when you consider the defensive upside of an OG Anunoby versus a Pascal Siakam, when you consider that, yes, he is ahead offensively, and he may always be ahead offensively, maybe OG never figures out the balance stuff, the portability of an OG Anunoby just as a spacer and the places he likes to be, if you're building this thing around Scotty Barnes, then OG Anunoby at $35 million is a much better proposition eventually. $35 million, $36 million, whatever he commands, is a much better proposition and a much better person to build with than Pascal Siakam post 30 at $45 to $47 million, maybe more. So that all being said, let's get to some Pascal Siakam trades. Before we do that, I'm going to take some time to just answer some quick comments. So if you don't want to see me answering comments, go away and come back in 2 minutes. Okay. I'd start Kenny Lofton over Pascal. I'm a big Kenny Lofton fan, but you're definitely crazy. Agreed. Absolutely. He's a super buff Shane Battier. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. Not at all, actually. like it or not, he wants out of Toronto. We have to deal with reality and not wishful thinking. Do you want to lose OG for nothing after next? Unless you have a source that says he wants out of Toronto, the last on this, the official word from people who would know is that he wanted an expanded role and that he would welcome a change of scenery if he can't get it here. If you move Pascal Siakam, he gets his expanded role because he moves to second option next to Scotty, or potentially even like a 1A 1B type of situation. I think he'd be good enough defensively to just tread water. Trade OG. I'm not saying trade OG. What are you talking about? He's massively overrated. I think he's massively underrated. Because honestly, if he was in a system where he had even, I want to call it like some sort of system that was reasonable in terms of his role and responsibilities, I think you'd be talking about a defensive player of the year or something close to it. I don't know about defensive player of the year. That award very rarely rewards perimeter players. I think Marcus Smart was a bit of an anomaly. But yeah, like, I mean, I don't think so. All right. Thank you for the comments. Let us get into some of these trade ideas. All right, that's what you guys are here for anyways, right? Okay, so I was looking. You say Kawhi requested a trade? Is that true? Is that factual? Should I pull up my phone right now? Trade for Kawhi? Trade Pascal for Kawhi? Wow. Well, look into that. But yeah, that's crazy. Okay. Again, eh? All right. Let us get into Pascal trade number 1 and 2. So I have, hold on, how many trades do I have here? I have 6 trades. And I don't know which one of these you're gonna like. And quite frankly, I try to be a little bit realistic, but I think I'm gonna get flamed for a couple of these. I have a feeling. I just have a feeling. So flame away. Here's my first and second trades for Pascal Siakam. And they both involve an upside on youth. And I don't think that you'll lose much more, but I do think that the teams that receive Pascal in this situation would be able to kickstart something. Now, we can argue that why the hell would the Orlando Magic do this? They already have Paolo Banchero. Well, they have been trying to draft the next Pascal Siakam pretty much for 5 years. Under Jeff Weltman, they have been just trying to find this guy. Every single draft pick is like a Pascal Siakam wannabe. So why not just trade for the real thing, man? Like, I mean, I would be totally cool with it. Jonathan Isaac is partially guaranteed. You can waive him, and you acquire $29 million in this deal. You can actually waive him. I believe only $7 million of his contract is guaranteed through next year. So you actually, once you waive him, and I believe the waive deadline is December, if I'm not mistaken, I think you would actually move significantly under the cap, and it would just move you right under the tax line. You wouldn't have to move anybody else. And of course, you move Malachi Flynn in this because why the hell not? I think in terms of what's coming back, obviously Franz Wagner is incredible, and I think he fits really well with what you're trying to do. I think Jones Suggs can be a great point of attack defender. He will probably never live up to the top 5 billing. Maybe he can't stay healthy. I have no idea, but it's an intriguing prospect who showed some flashes of redemption late. I think obviously if you're the Raptors, mainly this is about Franz Wagner. I think he is probably, I mean, look, if you want my honest opinion, he had a better season than Scotty last year. So you could also argue that the Orlando Magic may not want to move on from him in order to get a max guy. But Pascal Siakam is still a better player than Franz Wagner. I mean, let's be real here, right? And Franz Wagner could very easily just be, he could potentially be scratching the surface of what he's about to be, or because he's so advanced and, he might just be, kind of topping out at this point too. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be adding picks here. I genuinely think that this trade makes less sense for the Magic than it does for the Raptors. And obviously it's a little bit homerish, but I think it makes I think it makes both I think it makes both teams better, to be honest. I think the Magic have a glut of young guys. I think adding some adding a grown up to that room, adding a veteran, adding a guy who can really play with Paolo, and I think it could help. Yeah, I think Franz and Pascal actually have a ton in common. Moving on to the next trade to the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is whoa. This is you better really really believe in Chet Holmgren making a full recovery. And for the Oklahoma City Thunder, this is a you better get Shea Gilgeous-Alexander some help really soon, or nothing is guaranteed. He could ask for a trade as soon as next year. I think this will depend on Chet's medicals. I think he really fits what the Raptors like to do defensively and offensively. Obviously, what they like to do or don't like to do will probably change now that they may be changing their head coach. But I think Chet has some intriguing potential. I think Lou Dort is a fantastic role player and someone who can give you so much off the bench. And I think he could potentially even start for you next to OG if you get an elite shot creator at the one. And Ousmane Dieng, why not? But I didn't really love what I saw from him this year. But, if the Raptors see something in him, I think this is one of those trades where you bet on the upside of a Chet Holmgren. You bet on your development staff, your training staff. I mean, he is a hell of a talent, a hell of a prospect, and he has all sorts of intriguing potential. And look, if you're looking at how does he fit long term next to Jakob Poeltl or whatever, he can shoot, man. He can shoot a little bit. And I think eventually long term, I mean, the upside of, shot blocking and passing and ball skills of him and Koloko, I think you could absolutely have something really exciting with those two. Look, he hadn't been injury prone prior to that injury, the Liz Frank injury that he suffered in that pickup game when he was backing up against LeBron. It really could have happened to anybody. Obviously, these injuries are a little bit more prevalent with big men, but I think, it could just be a freak injury and he could make a full recovery, or he could not. If you're the Raptors, you might ask for some draft compensation as well. They certainly have a ton of picks here, depending on how you feel about Chet Holmgren making that full recovery. I don't think I do this for less than Chet Holmgren, but I definitely see the upside for why they were, and I think Pascal fits into what they're trying to do as well, man, like big time. He is exactly the type of player that they would want to pair with a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, a secondary creator, and Shea is exactly the type of elite shot creator that could realistically take the load off of Siakam. I think they become a definite playoff team with this, and they kickstart their rebuild. They have so many interesting young players, from Josh Giddey to God, what the hell is his name? Jalen Williams, the other J-Dub. Like, they have tons of draft picks coming up. Losing a prospect who hasn't, even played a game for you yet is not going to break the bank for them, but this could kickstart something, and they can finally start tweaking that roster to, put something competent around Shea. I mean, for God's sake, you have a top 10 player in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, adding a top 20 player in Pascal Siakam, or a top 22 player in Pascal Siakam next to him. I mean, honestly, that team could be downright very impressive and very scary. Moving on. This is the Rudy Gay trade part 2, and I can already hear the boo birds on this one. People probably hate this trade, but it gives you a lot of what you don't have, which is team first guys who actually do other things other than dribble the basketball. I think Tyus Jones is a really underrated player. He's a really good backup point guard. I think he would easily bump Malachi or whoever the hell is in his way for that backup point guard spot. I think John Conchar and David Roddy are so freaking underrated, man. Like, the Raptors really like David Roddy around the draft, and I've really liked everything I've seen from him this year. I think he's sort of the prize coming back in this, and I know that most people are, if you're a Pascal stan and you haven't watched the Memphis Grizzlies, you're probably looking at this trade saying, like, this is the stupidest trade in the history of the world, right? But I think David Roddy, yesterday I talked about players who can start on a championship team, right? Like, players who can legitimately start on a championship team. I think David Roddy is going to be one of those guys who in a couple of years can start on a championship team. Genuinely think that he does so many good things on the basketball court that just don't necessarily show up, but there's a reason why they're super high on him. John Conchar, same thing. Luke Kennard, same thing. Like, I think they just do a lot of things. Is there a starter on a championship team or no, probably not. There's probably not a starter on a championship team here, but there is an entire bench of really good players. So if you can replace Pascal Siakam with a really good bench and then bump up someone like, I don't know, Gary Trent Jr. into the starting lineup. And so your starting lineup is like, or maybe Gary's a part of this, and your starting lineup includes, Scotty, Fred, I don't know, Scotty, Fred, OG, Jakob, and Precious Achua if he takes a step, right? Then your bench is solidified, right? Like this is a deep as hell bench. And you have just guys who play the right way, guys who kind of come out of a really good culture where ball movement is actually preached. I think it'd be an interesting trade. But I can imagine that a lot of people probably don't like this. Don't worry. I think you guys will like the next one a lot more. Someone saying Pascal Siakam for Wiggins straight up. Yeah, I don't know. That could be interesting. One, two. Well, it's not 7, it's 6, number 1. And number 2, you're letting go of 2. So you just, you can absolutely make room for these guys. You would need to trade. I mean, you have free agents, man. Like that's not back. That's one roster spot, right? Very easily. So you're already down to 3, right? You could easily trade Malachi. You could choose not to bring back Delano Banton. Not that I would suggest that, but I think Tyus Jones is better. There's a lot of intriguing upside. I think mainly you do this trade for David Roddy, Tyus Jones, John Conchar, and then you take a bit of a flyer on Zaire Williams. And I think you get 2 very serviceable players who can absolutely impact winning in Luke Kennard and Steven Adams. Does that mean that, you're going to have to trade, I don't know, or not bring back certain guys? Sure. But I mean, you have some time to clear up your cap sheet, and, you have some time to bring off, to get off some contracts before the season starts. Masai ain't making that trade. I don't know. He made that kind of trade before. This is a good trade. Y'all like it? David Roddy, solid. Like it, man. I'm surprised. I mean, like most people probably would be like, what the hell is this trade? All right. Let's get some. Okay. Now this is an interesting one. I consider this to be the solve all problems in one go. Does create a bit of a bit of a situation, but I think it's a good situation to have. You get 3 rotation players, and when I talk about starters for an NBA, an NBA playoff team, all 3 of these guys to start for an NBA playoff team for sure. Buddy Hield, Andrew Nembhard, Miles Turner. Why did the Pacers do this? Well, you have Tyrese Halliburton, right? You need to pair him with somebody. I think there's, like you have Ben Mathurin, you have draft picks. I mean, they have 3 draft picks coming up in this draft. So if they didn't want to let go of Andrew Nembhard in this deal, I could still see myself making this deal if you include 2 of those draft picks. So 2 draft picks, Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Does that get it done for Pascal Siakam? Siakam is the best player going out in this deal for sure. But I think Miles Turner, he does a lot of what I wish Pascal Siakam would do, which is play defense at the rim and actually shoot threes a lot. So, is he a franchise cornerstone? No. Is he an all-NBA guy? No. He's just a guy who fits. And I think he's a guy who would have excellent synergy with Scotty Barnes. I think he would play off Scotty really well. What are you guys feeling about this trade? I don't think this is mediocrity, man. I think Andrew Nembhard is pretty special. I saw I think he's underrated too, honestly. But you got to give something to get something. You're not getting Pascal Siakam for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. All right, that's just where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm looking at the trade board right now, and I'm sorry. I just absolutely find it hilarious how bad some of these trade offers for Pascal Siakam are. Someone legit proposed, I think, what did it say, Jaden Hardy and Ben Simmons? You think we're eating Ben Simmons' contract for Jaden Hardy and is just crazy. I mean, look, I understand that Pascal Siakam does not have the exact same value as OG Anunoby, but he would definitely be this. He can be the second best player on a championship team. You're not telling me that does not have a lot of value. It does. It definitely does. Um, I think it's fair. I genuinely do. I think, people look at Andrew Nembhard's biggest games. They're not looking at his bad games, right? He is an older rookie as well. So he's not like some 18, 19-year-old kid. Like he's come in with some serious pedigree. He is Canadian. That helps too from the marketing standpoint. I like it. So this is one deal that I think really I like. All right. This is the one that I will consider not very creative, but one that everyone seems to be all over. And let's talk about it. Shaedon Sharpe, another Canadian kid. You get him back. You get Dame Lillard some help. Anthony Simons does not play defense. I really want to be clear about this. He's not a bad defender. He's one of the worst defenders in the league. He gets lost off the ball. I watched a lot of Blazers this year just because I love Dame, and they were doing pretty okay earlier, and I was just curious to see how he would do with Jeremy Grant, and I wanted to see a little bit of Shaedon Sharpe. And yeah, I gotta be honest, that team was a wreck across the board, and there's a lot of things that Pascal Siakam could solve for them. 100%, right? Having a Pascal plus Jeremy Grant, plus, if you can add one more defender to that, yeah, you could actually be competitive with Dame. I think you could build something. I don't know if that's a championship core, but certainly Dame plus Pascal is a hell of a duo, right? And it's not a duo that most teams can really match. And you've committed heavy, heavy money to Dame Lillard. I don't think you have the time. I don't think he has the time. I don't think he wants to take the time to be around for another 3 years to figure out whether Shaedon Sharpe can play, right? If you're the Raptors, this is all about the youth upside, selling hope, all that stuff. Shaedon Sharpe flashed excellent potential down the stretch. Granted, the games didn't matter. Granted, he was overly featured on offense. Some of the percentages were decent, though. I mean, he looked good. He's obviously talented. I think they probably have a very good read on him. They are very adept at understanding Canadian prospects. They scout well in Canada. So if he is a guy who they believe has the mental toughness and the makeup to be, the type of player that you could genuinely package with Scotty and build a future. Scotty, OG, Shaedon Sharpe. Is that a dynamic trio to get really excited about as a 1-2-3 combo, especially if you see Scotty as a 1, you see Shaedon as a 2, the shot creation, all that stuff you like about Gary Trent Jr., but just in a much younger package with far more upside offensively to explode. And, it's kind of the benefit of having, a guy that you're building around who is pass first is, it leaves some room. It leaves some room for like elite shot makers and guys who want to be featured in the offense in terms of like high shot volume to actually come onto your team and not be buried. Like who's going to get 25 points per game with Luka? Nobody, right? It's really hard. I mean, Kyrie can do it, but like very few people are going to see their offense uptick with Luka. He takes so many shots, right? It's the same thing with playing with Giannis, and he has like 38% usage, 37% usage. Scotty's a different type of beast in that sense that he's willing to get off the ball. He's willing to participate in an offense and not just have everything run through him. He's a facilitator of ball movement. And if you're a player who occasionally is worried that, hey, I don't want to play with a guy who long term is going to stifle all my 40, 50 pieces, Scotty would never do that. Scotty's happy to have a teammate go off for 40, 50 every now and again. He'd be the happiest person in the room for you. So I think that sort of selfless culture can allow for other guys to really grow and thrive with him. Now, here's the fifth trade. Now, this is probably my favorite. Now, you're probably going to think, why not Shaedon Sharpe, man? This is by far my favorite trade. Like, I can't even explain to you how much I love this trade. First of all, I love Onyeka Okongwu. One of my favorite young players in the league. I also love AJ Griffin, and I also love Sadiq Bey. This is my Rob takes everything he loves off the Atlanta Hawks except for DeJounte Murray trade and gives them Pascal Siakam and Malachi Flynn. I don't know if this trade would require, something else, but the Atlanta Hawks are clearly out of ideas. They made a trade for DeJounte Murray. Would they be sold on the idea of a big three of Trae Young, Pascal Siakam, and DeJounte Murray? That's 3 All-Stars. The East has some parity, right? They obviously like these guys. And honestly, Bogdanovich, a little bit on the older side, but he's still got plenty of juice left in him, and he is exactly the type of movement shooter you need. I think this would be a godsend trade. Honestly, this is by far my favorite. I don't know if my loving it so much, does that mean that it probably can't happen? I don't think so. I don't think so, right? Siakam is younger than Bogdanovich, right? Malachi Flynn is still a prospect. I mean, some people might look at Malachi Flynn and Saddiq Bey as fairly equivalent prospects. So really, what are we talking about here? We're talking about you're giving them the best player in the deal. There's no way that with the cap figure of Trae Young, I mean, if they're keeping Trae Young long term, plus DeJounte Murray's next contract, which will come up in a year and a half to 2 years, he'll be eligible for another one. He's probably going to be a max. Plus John Collins, you're going to sign Onyeka Okongwu and AJ Griffin. Like at some point, you get too many young players and you have a big problem on your hands, especially if you're a small market team like Atlanta. I don't know if you can keep all these guys. So this is the one that I think I would go all in on. Like this is by far, like, because number one, I think you actually win with this trade. I think you win more with this trade. It doesn't solve all your issues. Yeah, Okongwu is kind of like a guy who doesn't shoot as well. And wow. El Bozo, Portland trade better in my opinion. Why? Well, you have to give something to get something. As I said, you're not getting Pascal Siakam for 3 role players, right? Like I like AJ Griffin, but he is a mid first round pick. Like let's not get it twisted. He's not like, he had a big game against us and he's got some future value, but he could still end up being like a total role player. You have no idea. So really it's 4 guys who are role players for 1 guy who's a 2-time All NBA. I think that's typically how this works, right? Like we can hype up young players all we want, but none of these guys. Portland trade more realistic. I think it's more realistic because you've just seen it more, but you could be right. No, he's not. Come on. FA asking, what is the Portland trade? That would be this one, man. So it's Simons, Nasir Little, and Shaedon Sharpe. I'm just not sold on Anthony Simons ever playing defense. So that's my big beef with that trade. Personally, just don't love it. Like that's just sort of where I'm at. Yeah. If y'all want, if anyone wants to call in and discuss this, the lines are open. Check the link in the description. Let me just put that comment here. If anyone wants to call in. If anyone wants to call in and discuss, check link. Okay. We give it 2 minutes. If nobody wants to call in, we're cool with that. All right. I want to take a minute to tell you something about myself, actually. So 6 years ago, right? Some of you may know this, some of you may not, some of you have heard about it. I started a film festival with my best friend, Angelica, and we were like a bunch of artists. I'm a filmmaker. Apart from doing this stuff, I'm a filmmaker. And man, I tell you, this thing grew so fast. We didn't know what we were doing in the first year. I put it together on my mom's death anniversary on December 15th, 2017. And I put it together with 6 friends. And we put this thing together and we had 420 people come out to this theater. It was awesome. It was in the winter. I've long standing had a bit of a hate against the Toronto attitude towards winter. Like I hate it. I hate how nothing happens in the winter here. I hate how everything in the winter has to do with like Christmas and Christmas markets. It's like, why can't we put on a film festival or a music festival in the winter? And there's always this idea that, oh, people won't come from the States, people won't come from Europe. And so we set out to prove that wrong. And we did. We had so many international guests. We built this thing up. In 2019, I got diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was very hard to put together that edition. But then I had my brain surgery and we put together our most ambitious one ever. I'm a very bet on myself type of person as well, unfortunately, as much shit as I talk about Fred VanVleet, I have a bit of a bet on myself, streak as well. Like when I'm down and out, I wanna double up and I want to do something even better. And that's probably why I like Becky Hammon so much. That's probably I just like underdogs. And so I wanted to put together the greatest thing ever. And when we created this entirely ambitious thing, and I put so much money, so much of our money into it, and we're putting this thing together, and the ticket sales are flying off, and then suddenly they just stopped. And I was just like, what is going on? They just stopped. My friend phoned me. He's like, yo, all these conferences are getting canceled all over. There's this thing coming from China and this thing coming from Asia, and it's bad. Like it's shutting down events all over North America. You guys might have to cancel. I'm like, we can't cancel. Like we have all these non-refundable deposits at the theater. And long story short, we lost a lot of money on that year, like a ton. Like we had such great films. We had the greatest films from around the world, man. We had films from Sundance. We had films from. We don't screen TIFF reruns. We're not just one of those festivals. We were like finding like the greatest filmmakers. We flew in people from all over the world. Some people, we had to eat the cost of like 25 hotel rooms, 28 hotel rooms, because all these people bailed last second. They couldn't travel. They had, some of the filmmakers were coming in from China. They couldn't even come in. So that was year 3. And we had an entire concert. It was incredible. Like we had rap. We had so much stuff, man. It was great. It was so much heart that went into it, so much money that went into it. But the money is secondary to the heart and the time that we put into this. And so the next year, obviously with COVID and everything, we couldn't put on a live event. And so year 4 happened virtually. And then the next year, year 5, Toronto introduced all these restrictions, in the winter. Y'all remember like the Raptors and all that stuff. And we were just like, man, if this happens again, we go bankrupt. So we decided to do virtual last year too. And this year we're taking a plunge. So we decided to go live. And to those of you, like, I have a feeling that this community is a little bit more artistically oriented, thoughtfully oriented than most basketball communities. So I just want to show you a 1-minute clip of what I'm talking about with this event. And then we'll get right back to basketball. So this is just a little bit of a touch of what this has been. So if you like thoughtful, interesting films and you're sick of everything you've watched on Netflix and you're tired of being spoon-fed ideas and being told what to feel, if you like Pensari basketball, I think you're going to really love Pandance. It's a lot of the same philosophy, a lot of the same introspection that's gone into it. Anyways, so for the video, okay. Thank you for that. I was wrong. Reports Kawhi could request a trade, meaning he didn't. Kawhi is a hell of a scorer if you have any inkling that, he could be healthy, but it's really different trading for him this time around. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's had a few more disastrous injuries. I think that as much as I like the idea of it, he is paid entirely too much for how much he plays. And yeah, like I guess you could bet on yourself again, not to keep using that term, and hope that Alex McKechnie can rework his magic with his rubber bands and strings and whatever, but I wouldn't go that way. I think the Raptors have to, as I said, turn the leaf. Also, I want to share something. So yesterday I talked about Becky Hammon and Jordi Fernandez, right? So here's the thing. After I did that, I realized that so much of my research going into yesterday was about Jordi Fernandez. And I got a whole bunch of really, you wouldn't believe this. I got a whole bunch of really nasty messages on Instagram saying that I was too woke and that I'm too stupid and that you mean, just check the comments on that video, right? There's so many people who think that, oh my God, you can't hire Becky, whatever. So, kind of a sleep time listening, I decided to watch an hour-long interview between her and Bob Myers, who is the general manager for the Golden State Warriors. Dude, watch it. I promise you, just watch it. Just watch it. Yo, she is so freaking charming. She is so real. She talks about relating to DeMar DeRozan, right? She's like, what do I, like this little 5'6" white woman, have in common with this black guy from Compton? And it turns out we have a lot in common. We talk about this, talked about that. There's so many good things about her. And the more I listened to her yesterday, the more I was just like, yo, this is what this team needs. She is the type of, like, she's crazy. Like, she's crazy. Like, I watched the game that she coached men in Summer League, the San Antonio Spurs Summer League roster. Yo, those players showered her, like, after the game, after they won that championship. They were all over. They were giving her hugs. It was Kyle Anderson on that team. Yo, they loved her. Like, I don't think you guys understand how progressive and open-minded certain NBA athletes are. Like, they're not dummies. Like, they're smart people. And she mentions that also in the interview. She says, you know, like, and it kind of struck a nerve with me with Nick Nurse. Now, you guys have listened to Nick Nurse talk for a long time, right? You've heard him in the post-game scrums. You've heard him in the pre-game. You've heard him, you know, maybe sometimes at halftime, or you've heard him talk after a big trade or something like that. You've listened to this guy talk, right? And if you're a real person and you kind of understand the team, the vibe, whatever, listen to Becky Hammon talk, man, and tell me that she doesn't have more in common with these players than he does. She absolutely does, man. She talked about the relatability factor. She was an undrafted player. All right. Now, long story short, I'm from New York. She played for the Liberty. I was a big fan of Becky Hammon. Long time. Okay. I was watching the WNBA because, you know, I had very strong women in my life, and, you know, WNBA was a new thing. Lisa Leslie, Tamika Catchings, like, there's so many good players that went through that. Sue Bird. Eventually Candace Parker comes along, right? And yo, Becky Hammon was definitely a part of that. But unlike most of those people, she was not big. She's a 5'6" feisty warrior, man. She has so much in common. She could relate to a Fred VanVleet, but she could also relate to a Pascal Siakam. She could also relate to a Scotty Barnes. She can also relate to every player on this roster, because ultimately she talked about this thing, the same thing that Jordi Fernandez talked about, which is, if you're going to lead people, you need to understand them. You need to understand who they are, right? So I guess in this moment, I just want to take a 5-minute cool down, since we're not having any callers, apparently. Let me know if the link is broken or something. Surprising, sometimes you don't get callers. But, so, I don't, okay, Mark, this is too far, man. Trashy franchise trying to be relevant with trying to hire Becky. How is that trashy, man? It's so sad that you think the way you think, man. Why is your worldview so ignorant? I'm just being straight with you. Why are you so ignorant? Do you assume that all women are just like doormats for men? Like, do you assume that all women just cannot talk to men, or are intimidated by men? She's not intimidated by anybody, bro. Like, I saw her talking down. Okay, so ironically, the championship game that I saw her coach, ironically, she was coaching against the Phoenix Suns that were I believe were being coached by Nate Bjorkgren. So that's a guy who got a head coaching job. Yo, she coached circles around that dude. Circles. When my girlfriend and I watched Las Vegas Aces this offseason, like last summer when they won, yo, I'm telling you straight up, she was like, they play better than the Raptors. Go watch. There's a video by a coach, and yo, anyone who's interested in searching this up, please search it, okay? There is a video which breaks down all the wonderful things that the Las Vegas Aces were doing, and just look at the complexity of that offense. And it's not that complicated. If you understand basketball, it's not that complicated. But just look at the sophistication of some of the sets that they're running, and look at how, and just try to imagine. Just try to imagine. Sorry, Lane. Lane was there, but now he's gone. We had a caller, but I was just trying to finish my sentence there. He is back. Hang tight, Lane. I'm going to be 1 second. So just try to imagine, Kelsey Plum, and try to imagine Fred VanVleet in her place. It shouldn't be too hard. They're about the same size, right? Try to imagine Scotty Barnes instead of Asia. Like, just try to imagine it, and you'll see very quickly that it translates. The basketball acumen is there. She spent 8 years under Greg Popovich. She's a fantastic coach, man. She's a fantastic coach, and she's a fantastic connector. And, as a person who has gone from very, very poor in my life, traveled a lot, been very poor, been also kind of not poor. I've been president of a fraternity, which is a very weird thing for me to even admit out loud. Like, I couldn't even imagine that when I was 14, where I was. I'd be president of a frat at U of T. Like, I was like, what? It's diversity, it's range, right? I've been to different countries. I speak, different languages. It helps. It helps to connect with people. I find myself able to connect with anybody. I could literally meet a homeless person and have a 2-hour conversation. I can meet a CEO and have a 2-hour conversation. This is a very special and very rare skill set. People do not have it usually. So I think that, she has it. And she is she's an undrafted, basketball player. She's a champion. I mean, she went to the finals multiple times in the WNBA. I think you're sleeping on her, man, for sure. All right, let's get Lane on, and then we have K Money. Oh, K Money. All right, y'all want to come on together? Let's put y'all in together. K Money and Lane, y'all both on. What's up?
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry. I have completely missed what you guys are talking about. I just got on YouTube and saw you were live. Decided to join since I hadn't joined in a while.
Okay, cool. We're talking about, I mean, we could be talking about one of two things. We could either talk about, and I guess we're NSN, how are you doing? We could talk about, potentially, if you want, we can talk about Pascal Siakam trades, the ones that I presented. Or we can talk about Becky Hammon. And I think we're on the Becky Hammon subject right now. So let me know what you think about Becky Hammon first, and then we can get to, Pascal versus OG and what this team should do.
Yeah, in my opinion, she's probably one of my top 5 I would put in. I prefer Kenny Atkinson. In my opinion, either him or Jama.
Okay.
But yeah, she's for sure top 5. I do understand. I don't think the players would be disrespectful towards her, but I do think there is.
I mean, Jakob's saying glowing praises of her.
Sure.
DeMar DeRozan has said that she deserves a head coaching job.
The players respect her.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, why wouldn't you respect her, right? Like, she, here's the thing that people don't realize. I mean, people blanket statement players, NBA players, as guys from the hood or whatever. Most NBA players had very strong mother figures in their lives. Mm-hmm. Fact, right? Whether you're talking about Scotty, whether you're talking about, well, I guess OG didn't, but that was the unfortunate part about him. But he's also very respectful to women. He doesn't have a hint of misogyny in his life. Jakob Poeltl had a very strong mother in his life. A lot of them have had very strong female influences, and I think that they would relish the opportunity to help her achieve her dream too, because she deserves it. I genuinely believe that this is not a charity thing. She's actually one of the most qualified coaches in the world. Mm-hmm. K Money, what do you think, man?
Yo, first of all, how you doing, man? It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. How you doing? I don't know how to run a Twitter space, but I've come into a couple, and every time I go into one, you're in it.
Yeah, bro. I gotta do my due diligence. What's it called? Defending Scotty. From these casuals.
Oh, that's your role? You're K Money, but you're Scotty defender on the Twitter spaces. I appreciate it.
But yeah, man. About Becky Hammon. Like, anybody from the Popovich, branch, like, they're really good coaches overall, right?
They are.
Yeah, like, in the NBA, for me, like, I don't know too much about her, but I know that anybody that's coached with Popovich is usually experienced and, like, picks up knowledge from him, right? And he's a great coach himself, so.
I think it's, like, presence. Like, when I think about, like, what would be the greatest coach, right? Most people think about X's and O's. And, Nick Nurse, X's and O's, special. He's a very special X's and O's coach. You can talk about his dog shit offense, but Some of the stuff that I watched him do during the championship run, some of the stuff that I watched him do in the bubble, that team was so well coached in so many regards. There's a couple times where you disagree, but overall, he earned that reputation as being a really great coach and one of the top 5 coaches in the league. The problem is connecting with people is really difficult, especially like sustained relationships. So I think when I hear someone like a head coach candidate talking about connection, connecting with players, accountability, playing the right way, she has this thing that's probably gonna be music to your ears and music to everyone's ears. She says this is like a Becky Hammon staple quote. Okay, she used to say this as a player. She says this as a coach too. She says, "If you're open, shoot. If you're not, pass. If you're doubled, definitely pass." It's a
Okay.
very simple philosophy. And it's a great philosophy to play basketball. And look, like, I mean, it will be known, I'm sure that there's at least, I mean, she's not just a woman, she's also gay. So it's like, it's not like she's breaking a lot of barriers in one, right? There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There's a lot of media that comes with that. And it's not clear to me whether an organization is willing, has the balls to take that on. But I definitely have heard her speak. I've heard, Kenny Atkinson speak. I think I like what she's saying better. But that's just me. But I like Jordy Fernandez too. So those two for me are like front runners with Jama, who's apparently not interested. So like I'm kind of hoping. But man, if
Uh,
there is a team that would hire her, it's probably them.
for sure. What do you think about here's another underrated one for the coaching job. What do you think about Stan Van Gundy or Van something like that? I forgot now.
I'm kind of like, I mean, I like him, but no. Not
Nah.
not for this roster. I'm looking at this roster, yo. Like to me, it's like I gotta get a coach who vibrates with my lead players. Like I gotta get a coach who can talk to Scotty on his level. She played point. She could talk to him. She was underrated as hell. She could talk to him. Like I think about like what kind of a person can unite Scotty and Fred and put them on the same page. What coach can actually genuinely, like, she's so transparent and so honest. Like she's so blunt. Like she's doing a post game presser after the Aces won a championship, and she was just like, she just can't contain herself. Like she's helplessly honest. And I think players respect that, and she knows that. She knows that if you're fake, they'll sniff it out. And with Nurse and Bjorkgren, I cannot imagine a player connecting with these guys. Like I can't imagine a player like I if like here's my point. If Nick Nurse met Precious Achiuwa 150 to 250 times over the last 2 years, and Becky Hammon met him twice, after 2 times, I think she would understand Precious Achiuwa better than Nick Nurse. So that's where it's like real see real. I think she's real. And I think that's important. And I think like she probably had a deeper connection like with DeMar DeRozan in like 2 years of coaching him as an assistant coach than Nick Nurse did in 5 years. I would be very certain of that. It's just a connection thing. Like, and I think that, when you talk about culture setters, culture changing, etc., culture starts with people. The Draymond Green, Steph Curry, that sets the culture in the Golden State Warriors. Steve Kerr, he's setting the culture. He's setting the standard for what it means. And if you listen to the Raptors, everything is, we've lost our culture, we've lost our way, we've lost our work ethic, we've lost the vibes, and you need a special person to bring that all back. Is Jace and NSN? What do you guys think?
I kind of agree with your points that you were saying. I was just listening like in the background to the stream, but yeah, it was pretty good points. I would have really loved Jamma though. I was watching a bunch of Jamma videos, and just like his overwhelming like enthusiasm for the game, it's like and his passion for like teaching, like just him like sitting down with like players and stuff and like trying to explain them and stuff. I feel like that teaching, that passion to like translate the information is so like apparent.
Yeah,
It's
it
like a
always comes
vibe.
down to fit, right? You have all these young players, right, on this roster, right? And you gotta view it as like who's a good teacher, who's a good connector, who's a good culture builder, right? I think that Jama is all three, right? But in the X's and O's department, I think Becky could be even on another level. So she might have him beat there. And I think Jordy Fernandez is kind of like a merging of all. Like they all have those skill sets, but I think that's something that made Ime such a good candidate too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about Jay Wright? Kind of as that culture guy. I know college, the NBA is a big step, but he did go to Villanova and build one of the best cultures in college basketball for a few decades.
He isn't on the list, which is
He isn't.
interesting. He isn't on the list, but I think they should talk to him. Look, I think they should talk to everyone. I really do. Like, I think this should be a wide search. I don't think they should rush this, especially now that their lead candidate has fallen off. I think you can take some time. You can definitely talk this out.
I would love to see what's his name? I think Leonard Miller, Florida State's coach. I'd love to see him on the staff, not as a head coach, but as an assistant coach. He's in
Leonard Hamilton,
Leonard Hamilton,
and as much as I would like to see him also on this staff because he's an ex Scotty coach and he's a great man, he is also 74 years old.
He is. He's. I feel bad because they're kind of forcing him out down at Florida State. He hasn't had his last 2 years have been very, very poor. Which
yes,
sucks.
they have.
They're
Look, I went into a coaching deep dive last night and I became very fascinated with this idea of Mike Budenholzer. Not as a replacement coach, don't get me worried. I just wanted to understand how did he do what he did against the Bucks? Sorry, against the Heat. 0.5 seconds left. He doesn't call the timeout. That feels to me like the most obvious coaching decision in the history of the world. It's like you fell asleep with your team on the brink of elimination at home. It's inexcusable. It's a fireable offense, right? You can argue maybe they missed a shot anyways. Maybe he just wanted to go to overtime. It's still inexcusable. You cannot defend that. And even after he offered very little in terms of defense of it, he just said, yeah, we probably could have used a timeout there. That's ridiculous. That's not accountability. And, you're openly being blasted by Giannis Antetokounmpo in the post game saying like, I didn't like our adjustments, whatever. The writing is on the wall. I wanted to go back and I wanted to listen to what he was like with Atlanta. So when he was introduced by Atlanta as a head coach 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Yo, totally different person. Totally different person. The years have really worn on him.
Yeah.
The spark in his eye is gone. I don't mean to sound floofy about it, but like it's true. Like he doesn't speak with zest or passion. He just kind of seems defeated. And it's like it's exhausting. Being a head coach is exhausting. I was listening to Becky Hammon talk about, the sleepless nights, and sometimes she'll be up until 3 a.m., 4 a.m. preparing a scouting report or something for Popovich, and then 7 a.m. one of the players is asked to meet her in the gym, and it's like that's 3 hours. Like the coaches age fast. It's like watching Obama enter the office and then exit the office. It's like if he aged fast.
Yeah.
So I just think sometimes coaches are like they have years, and then once those years are gone, they're just gone. And you can keep trying to milk out the last few, good ideas out of them like we did with Lenny Wilkins. But at some point, you've lost the passion for it. Some people never lose it. But I think, you could argue Greg Popovich is in that situation right now, not seeing the brilliance and the pep and he's still passionate, but I'm not seeing the same zest and creativity that I saw, 10 years ago. Granted, losing Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard will do that to you.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I've seen a lot of coaches go through that life cycle, and I wonder if Budenholzer and Nurse are examples of guys who just burn out.
Yeah, I think Nurse is a guy though to where let's say they do fire Budenholzer, I fully expect Nurse to be hired within the next week. By the
And I think he could do a great job with that team.
I do too, but I think Budenholzer hid behind Giannis a lot. I mean, it's easy to say that when you have a top 3 player in the world on your team. But I mean, I really think that he hid behind Giannis. I think if you put Nurse on that roster, if you can figure out a way to retain Middleton, that I don't see how they're not the title favorites next year. Nurse will completely revolutionize that team, just like he did with Kawhi on the Raptors.
Can he turn back the clock on Chris Middleton's legs? Can he turn back the clock on Brook Lopez? I don't think that team is anywhere near the Raptors where they were, especially in terms of the ascent. And I think Kawhi Leonard versus Giannis Antetokounmpo.
So I think with that, you have to take a page out of the Steve Kerr book of coaching and look at how he's handled Draymond Green and Klay Thompson these past 2 years, right? Because Klay Thompson was supposed to come back and just be ashes. And granted, he has not been as good as he was before the injuries, but he is not playable. He's still a huge part of their team. I think Chris Middleton could still be that. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Klay Thompson is right now, and I'd be wary to sign him to a huge contract, but it would just be interesting to see.
But I mean, like the facilitation of like what you were meant to do and what you can now do can be totally overwhelming. Like
Yeah, I agree.
Klay Thompson was initially meant to be the second leading scorer on that team. He was meant he was also meant to be their best defender, their best wing defender. Every night he was on the best assignment and he was giving you 25, 26 points on like really efficient scoring. He can't do the efficient scoring part anymore, and he can't do the defense part anymore. The biggest regression for Klay has been defense. So if you don't shore up your defense by getting a Moses Moody behind him and Andrew Wiggins next to him, if you don't get that, then you're in the lottery. You have to compensate. And so Chris Middleton's role in that offense is really to function as a end of shot, maker type, right? Like he's their primary option down the stretch because Giannis can't hit free throws. Giannis can't hit outside shots. So he's kind of like a primary creator or a secondary creator who becomes a primary creator when the situation calls for it. He can't really do that right now. I mean, and also the defense has fallen off a lot with him too. And I think maybe, Giannis is not necessarily the type of guy who's getting better right now, but maybe is starting to flatline, if not get worse as well.
Right.
Perfectly reasonable to assume.
I mean, a top 5 player in the NBA is a great place to be, though.
It's a great place to be. It's a great place to be. But I mean, we're a couple of seasons removed from he's definitively the best player in the league.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
To now he's a top 3 player, and next year he might be a top 5 player, and then blink and close your eyes and wake up in 2 years he could be a top 12 to top 15 player, and now we're talking about title window closed. I don't know how much Nick Nurse can revolutionize that offense, but I do think he would do a better job than Coach Budenholzer. Now, if that means if Coach Budenholzer led them to being championship favorites, then yes, I guess in a sense they would be championship favorites again under Nick Nurse, new voice, whatever. But yeah, I have my doubts about the long term unless they do something drastic with the youth deficit there.
So, crazy hypothetical. Let's say you let Middleton walk in the offseason for nothing, and you fire
nothing.
For nothing. Yeah, you fire Budenholzer, you hire Nurse, and let's say next year you're a 45 win team. Giannis is pissed. Do you move Giannis and Holiday the next offseason to try to recoup some draft assets because they have nothing right now? Or do you just wait till they get pissed off and leave for pennies on the dollar and then
You're right. They do have very little, if not anything, because they traded all their draft picks for Drew Holiday, right?
Yeah.
And they're always going to be good. I mean, look, in this situation, I always reference back to the "It Could Be Worse" video that I did with the Raptors, where I said, hey, like, we finished in no man's land, but it could have been worse. Like, we could have finished a lot higher than cratered in the first round, and then everyone's really sad. And that's kind of what the Bucks did, right? Like, do you think if the Bucks could do it again, just in terms of draft assets, provided, I don't know if they have their pick this year, do they?
Shoot. I honestly, this might be one of the years they have the swaps.
Okay, let me just look at this here. So if you think they could do it all over again, do you think they would have the season they had and then fizzle out in the first round, or do you think they would prefer to have like a 13th overall pick? Yeah, they I believe they're giving it up. Yeah, it's a swap.
Yeah, I thought it was a swap. I don't know. Holiday.
So never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holiday's one of the reasons you got that championship. I think you do that trade 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I'm not saying the trade. The trade is fine. I'm saying this year, how it went for them. Do you think they would prefer the first seed and get bounced in the first round, or do you think they would prefer the 13th seed and get bounced in the play-in? Sorry, in terms of draft. Who would you rather be right now? Is kind of my point. Like, obviously, like if I could make you a deal where I say, okay, you could either, okay, here's a question for all 3 of you, and I'm very curious. I'm gonna give you a team and the Raptors, and you tell me, if you were a GM, would you rather be the general manager of that team or the Raptors for the next 5 years, based on current cap situation, whatever, and if you need any explanation. So let me just call this the future value index. So Milwaukee or Toronto? So we'll
Toronto.
start with Lane.
My fault. I'm sorry. Toronto.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Is Jay?
Toronto.
Wow. Okay. NSN?
I think he said his mic working.
His mic is working. NSN, your mic's on, yeah? Okay. So y'all both going with Toronto, eh?
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Because we have young players, like we already have really good young players, and we have our picks, right? We just
Yeah,
don't
I
pick for
take it
next
because
year,
of the
but-
picks. We have more flexibility.
And we scout way better. Like we're one of the best scouts in the league. So even when we get like the lower picks, we still make a better use of it. Than, like,
You don't
fucking
think
Rockets.
if they tried right now they couldn't trade Drew Holiday for like 3 draft picks? They probably could.
They could, but as the GM of the Bucks, you're putting yourself on a hot seat with ownership if you do that. So if you trade you Holiday and then let's say I don't know,
What could you get for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Could you get the entire Raptors roster? Like, let's say, for instance, like, could you get Pascal plus OG plus Gary plus 3 picks?
oh for sure.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure Portland.
So
said
basically,
they
the
would-
value here is Scotty Barnes. So Scotty Barnes versus everything else on the roster.
Mhm.
Okay, that's fair. And yeah, someone said Bucks and repeater tax. Yes, they are. They are very, very capped out, and they are. Yeah, I mean, in a weird way, if you're not going to win any more championships with that team, and Giannis is just going to age out, and you know he has his holes, man, and they're not holes that he's managed to fix. Not the easiest guy to build around. Also, not the hardest guy to build around. He's a all defense type of guy. He's a defensive player of the year candidate still. Yeah, that's interesting. I honestly, I don't know. I guess I would lean Toronto just on principle, but there's a part of me that's just like, if I took over the Bucks right now, I feel like I could easily part out a lot of those players and get back young assets if I really wanted to rebuild. And also, I don't know anyone on the Raptors necessarily who's going to be better than Giannis is for the next 5 years.
What about Dame Lillard to Bucks? What do you guys think?
Dame Lillard to the Bucks for what?
You would have to go up Drew Holiday.
Holiday.
I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. I love Drew. A lot, actually. Okay, Cleveland or Toronto?
Cleveland.
Is Jace?
Cleveland or
Yeah,
Toronto?
I'm
in
leaning
that situation.
Cleveland a bit.
Who would you rather be the general manager of for the next 5 years if you just were not a homer, like a Raptor homer, and you just wanted to pick the best team with the best assets, best
The next 5 years?
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to say Toronto. Darius Garland is really good, though.
Darius
Mitchell-
Garland, Donovan
better than-
Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I mean,
They have
that's
the small forwards.
hmm.
They have the small forwards they have are underwhelming in my point of view. But
Yeah, but they also have mid-level exception potentially. They also could trade one of these guys. But yeah, I mean that's hard. Okay, so okay, fine. So we're getting Toronto across the board from you two. Okay. Wait, no, Lane said Cleveland, right?
Yeah, I said leaning Cleveland.
Is Jay said leaning Cleveland, but Lane, you
Yeah.
said Cleveland, or did you say Toronto? Lane? Did he say Toronto? Yo, chat, let me know. Did he say Toronto or did
He
he say
said Cleveland.
He said Cleveland. Okay, so we're split on that. What about New York?
Oh, and,
Oh,
I don't know.
I think Lane
I'm
got
kinda
kicked.
liking New York. New York has been really good all of a sudden. I don't know. It feels like the Knicks have turned into like a laughing organization to like a really good team in like a year, or like 2 years. It's been so quick. Like they've turned everything around.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
So you would pick the Raptors over the Knicks or the Knicks over the Raptors?
I would honestly would pick the Knicks. They have like really good bench players too, like quickly and they have really good. They have decent value with RJ Barrett's.
I think RJ's pretty terrible personally, but that's just me.
Okay.
I don't think he's good value. I think Emmanuel Quickley and Quentin Grimes are really good players. I like some of their bench pieces for sure. I really like Josh Hart. I'm a really big fan of his.
Yeah.
I like Mitchell Robinson. I really like Jalen Brunson. Julius Randle's all right. I think there's a lot of good things on that roster, but I think they are the definition of, fifth. Like, I don't. I'm very curious to see if they're going to get out of the next round. But if they do, holy, that would be amazing to watch. Look, I
Maybe.
mean, I grew up a Knicks fan when I was younger, so there's a part of me that's like rooting for them, but there's a part of me that's just it's very hard to root for Julius Randle, man.
Yeah.
Lane, you take New York or Toronto?
I I take Toronto because
I do want to remind you, New York has a plethora of picks.
I know.
That's why I'm saying like
So in
I'm,
my
I think I'll
opinion,
take New York, but you can go Lane. Go ahead.
my fault. My fault. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead, Lane. Go ahead, Lane.
I would take Toronto because I think Pascal is better than Randall, and I believe in Scotty's
By a
development.
lot?
I think by a hitch. Like if I was to rate them out of like, I don't know.
It's too bad that Pascal can't have Julius Randle's shot diet, because honestly, if he took as many threes as he did, he would be so much better
For sure.
because he's a better defender.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe in Scotty's development a lot more than I believe in Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly's. So because of, I think Toronto's got the better player right now. I think we
what
have,
about Jalen Brunson, though? I
has-
mean, it cannot be slept on that he's like 25, 26 years old, and
it
he is
can.
ascending into a star. I don't know about a superstar, definitely not a superstar, but an all-star at least, for sure.
Yes,
I don't know. They have something for sure. Like I'm not going to sleep on them for sure. So
they,
personally for me, it's a bit of a toss up. Obviously, Scotty blinders on, OG blinders on. I prefer OG to RJ Barrett. I prefer Scotty to their entire bench. And then so it just comes down to how much better do I think Jalen Brunson is than Fred VanVleet? Yeah, he's
I think,
better. He's
yeah.
better offensively. I don't know about defensively. He's gotten a little bit better defensively. I don't know. It's not big enough for me to move off the gap, but the picks do edge very much in New York's favor. What about Philly?
Toronto.
Really?
James Harden leaving this summer for Houston looms over that organization like a cloud.
But a top 3 player in his prime in Joel Embiid, who's easily like, I mean, if I told you that Scotty never becomes better than Joel Embiid, like I think that's a likely outcome at this point. Very few players will ever touch the heights that Joel is at right now.
Yeah.
I hate watching him. I hate watching him play. Cannot stand that guy, but I cannot deny how impressive he is. And Tyrese Maxey is a hell of a player as well.
So
I really like DeAnthony Melton. Like DeAnthony Melton. They have some stuff on that team. They have some stuff on the bench. I don't know what their pick situation is off the top of my head. Yes, losing James Harden would be a massive blow, but it's hard to pick the Raptors over that team. But I think beyond that, like I would take the Raptors over Miami, no doubt. Even everything that's happening with Jimmy Butler right now, I don't want to be on the books for that. Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Victor, there's just nothing else.
Something on the Miami thing, because look, I know the plethora of picks is great for New York. I know very much that James Harden and Embiid is very attractive for Philly. My thinking is I would prefer Miami over Philly because I generally believe in the staff that they have in Miami. I don't know if it's important to take that into consideration, but for
No,
me,
that's
when I
fair. You
see
have
Doc
Eric
Rivers
Spoelstra,
and Eric Spoelstra, I have the two
but
different.
you also have Duncan Robinson on a very unfriendly contract. I get what you're saying though. They have a intangible quality of developing guys like they'll probably get something really good out of Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. Like there's so many undrafted guys. They have a little bit of a Raptors. What the Raptors used to have is kind of what they have too. But I mean, I think Bam Adebayo is a little bit overrated, personally.
agree.
I think he could be an all-star next year. He was an all-star this year. No, not this year. But he could be an all-star next year. Maybe I'm just wrong, but I see
He's a max player. He
Vince-
definitely should be an all-star every single year. He's a max player in his prime. I think the thing that bothers me about him is all the potential in the world to do things, and I've talked to Miami fans that swear he's like Giannis light, but he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have that dog sometimes in him. like that killer instinct to just go. Like he can be invisible for an entire 2 quarters. It's a lot of what people accuse Scotty of being, but the difference here is like he has the ball on every possession if he wants it. It's not he's getting frozen out or nothing. He has an unselfish team that easily will find him if he wants to, and he just disappears in big moments. Not just he's not disappearing against Charlotte and Detroit. No, he's disappearing in massive playoff moments. I think
between Pat Riley and Daryl Morey, who do you choose? Like as like GMs?
Pat Riley.
Pat Riley easily.
That's why I'm saying Miami, guys. That's why I'm saying Miami. I know, but like in my head, it matters. I don't know.
But you're the GM. You're the general manager. He'd be your president in this case.
Okay, yeah. Well, no, wait. He's the president. He's the GM. What's the difference really here? But
I mean, you're right. Some of it is semantics. I mean, what does Masai Ujiri's role mean now versus what it used to be 10 years ago, whatever, or 8 years ago? I get it. But yeah, like, I mean, they have a good staff there for sure. Okay. Who else? Who else could I really see taking over the Raptors' future? Orlando. So you would take Orlando over the Raptors' future?
I would take Orlando over the Raptors right now, especially if they get a top 3 pick in this year's draft.
Is Paolo a really big part of your thinking here?
Paolo, Franz, and if you look, they have developed.
What else is there?
I'm a big Jonathan Isaac believer. I don't think he'll ever be a star or anything, but I think he can be a great rotational player.
As a big Jonathan Isaac believer myself, I think the boat may have sailed. I know he's 20. I know he's 24, 25 years old, but like honestly, not playing competitive basketball for 3 years is a very tough matzo ball. He might get waived.
He looked good when he played though this past year.
He got injured again, right?
Yeah, he did.
So
they had to shut him back down.
So I mean, look, it's just he has that type of body that it's just like it scares you. Like initially, it's just people aren't supposed to move that way to some extent. He's a freak. Like athletically, he's an absolute freak, right? Like I saw him in that round against Pascal Siakam and the work that he did on him, and I was just like, holy. Like this guy's gonna be a beast. Like he could be the greatest defender of all time. That's how I felt about Jonathan Isaac 5 years ago. But now it's just like it's just sadness. Every time I see him, it's just sadness. The same way I feel about Lonzo Ball at this point. It's just sadness because you just feel like these guys just aren't gonna get right. You know. But I don't rate Paolo that way. Like I know he won Rookie of the Year, but I don't rate him like on this. Like I think Franz is a better player.
I agree. But I like Paolo's body a lot. I think he can add to his game. I think he's only scratching the surface.
What about defensively though? Does he play defense?
Not yet. He'll get there. I seriously believe he'll get there. I'm not calling him Jason Tatum at all, but he's one of those guys that's going to come out. And Jason Tatum, remember how raw he was those first 2 years, and people bagged on him. There's people saying Kyle Kuzma.
No, Jason Tatum was in the Eastern Conference Finals, man.
He was, but
he wasn't raw. Like he was a good defender out of the gate. I mean, he
was, but was he as polished as he is now?
No one's as polished as they are at 24 than they were at 19. I get that, but I mean, like, you gotta like, what does Paolo do? Like, I mean, I get it. Upside, big plus size. You know,
he's a Coach K guy. He's a Coach K guy. I mean, maybe that's where I see it. He's a Coach K guy. Coach K guys usually come into the league and it takes them a year or two, and then they really turn it on.
You're basically saying reputation of where he comes from is important. The same way like Kentucky guards have a reputation to be better after some years.
Yeah, for sure. I just think he's going to improve. This isn't his ceiling at all. And he's also not on a winning team. His team was
25 years old though, and he's missed some years from like actually playing NBA level basketball too.
I think he can play now. If you take him and you put him on the Sacramento Kings right now instead of Keegan Murray, or the Kings better.
I see what you're going with it. Okay, I see what you mean.
Okay, so here's a list of players who played for Coach K. I just wanna evaluate this from a perspective of just how good are these guys. Okay, Justice Winslow,
bust, unfortunate bust.
Zion Williamson.
Jury's still out, but when he plays, he's top 5 in the league, dare I say.
I'm on Fred alert with him.
In fairness, he was top 5 before he got there, but yeah. Mark Williams. He looks good. He looks really good. He looks great. I mean, honestly, he was one of the better centers in this rookie class for sure. Jack White,
Who?
exactly. Gary Trent Jr.
One of those guys where he flashed in the playoffs, but it took him a year or two to really
Okay.
pick it up.
Jason Tatum.
Took him a year or two to pick. He was good. He was good coming out. But there was people that saying that Kyle Kuzma was a lot better player than he was. And if you could pull up those same chat logs today that were there in 2018 and 2019, I'd laugh at them.
Some people have atonement to do.
I don't know who the hell those people were, but I'm going to guess they were Laker fans. Austin Rivers.
He had some solid years. He was nothing special.
Okay. Cam Reddish. Bust.
Yes.
Yo,
Mason
guys,
Plumlee.
in the Pascal Siakam Blazers trade, I might bring him as a scrub. If they don't want to give like picks and stuff, I might say just give us the scrub of the bones of Cam Reddish that you still have.
No. Mason Plumlee.
I like Mason.
You're saying no, even to the even as a scrub, you're saying no. Even as like a bonus to make the trade.
I don't want Cam Reddish. I don't want Cam Reddish on my team. Like, I'm just, I don't get it personally. Wendell Moore Jr., Luke Kennard, Trevor Keels, Tyus Jones, Trey Jones, Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson's coming up.
Special.
Tyus is good. Kyrie Irving.
Yes.
Okay, good. Brandon Ingram.
Yes.
AJ Griffin.
Took him a year or two.
Okay.
AJ Griffin is going to figure it out.
Okay, Seth Curry.
Yeah, he's been solid throughout his career.
He's been solid. Wendell Carter Jr. He's been really good.
Yes.
Vernon Carey, Scotty's ex, teammate from AAU.
He never
high school.
He never got a chance.
He hasn't gotten a chance yet. Maybe he will get it. Marvin Bagley.
Oh God.
RJ Barrett.
No, bust.
Okay. Grayson Allen.
Yeah, I would say so.
He's been all right. So
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, it's not like, I mean, I will 100% agree with you that Duke prospects are generally better, but that's kind of what happens when you're the national powerhouse, blue blood, and you get all the top prospects, right? You're going to have a Zion, you're going to have a Paolo. RJ was like probably the top ranked player in the country when he signed on with them. Zion was like the second or third in that class. He signed on with them. Paolo was the number one player in his class. He signed on with them. So if you just get the number one guy every single year, your track record is going to be pretty elite, right? I think. But I would say it's an average to above average hit rate. But I see what you're saying. But I don't see all those guys as like, oh, it took a while. I mean, Gary Trent Jr. definitely exceeded out of the gate. Seth Curry was pretty good, I guess. He spent some time in the G League, though.
Yeah.
But someone like RJ Barrett, I haven't really seen any growth trajectory from him. Cam Reddish, there's a lot of guys, and they're lottery picks, yo. Like, a lot of those guys are top 5, top 6 picks. And yeah, in terms of like programs that really churn out like great players, I can't think of one. Like, some people say Kentucky.
I'd say Duke and Kentucky are kind of 1 and 2. A really underrated one would be USC.
DeMar DeRozan, Evan Mobley, Nick Young. That's 3. Who else?
They got guys.
Isaiah Mobley. That's 4. He's been good in the G League.
I can't remember. Oh shoot, Texas is another one that's super underrated with turning guys out.
Chris Bosh, TJ Ford,
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, they have been good. And Florida's been good too. Al Horford, Joakim Noah. They've had some good ones as well. The Gators. Yeah, I mean, these are good programs. So I guess like the Raptors are in an interesting place right now where I don't think that there are a lot of teams. Like I genuinely believe like the Raptors, in terms of like if I could pick any job in the league to be for the next 5 years, I think the Raptors would be on a short list of like my top 10, 11, 12. So I think there are 18 teams definitely in worse positions. There's 3 to 4 teams where it's debatable. And then there's probably like 7 or 8 teams where you're like, I definitely would take that job over the Raptors job, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think some of those teams come with huge question marks too. Like the New Orleans Pelicans, like, yeah, in theory you would take Zion and Brandon Ingram and, Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy. Like, it's a great young core and what an exciting prospect. But like, what's Zion and when is he going to be healthy? Take the Ja Morant situation, right? Like, what is that going to become? I don't know. Like, but, obviously, on theory, if you think about it, they have 3 players that are excellent. Jaren Jackson, Ja Morant, right? Desmond Bain. Like that's a fantastic trio to build around. And you have all the young players in the world. Like I can't imagine a person who's not high who wouldn't rather take on the Memphis Grizzlies heap of assets and, young players and all their scouting. They've put so much good stuff into that organization. So yeah, there's some teams that definitely I think are ahead of the Raptors, and then I just don't think the Raptors are at the bottom like everyone seems to think.
I have a few questions about some of the teams that you mentioned. Some
Sure.
of the teams that you mentioned have top 5 picks, and I looked at the video you made, and many top 5 picks don't actually stay with their team. So sometimes I think some of the teams you put there are overvaluing themselves, like else, and maybe I'm just a hater, possibly, but I do believe that the
It's
stuff
really
top
hard to
5
hear
picks.
you. You're kind of going in and out, like you're a little bit muffled. Sorry. Yeah.
I made a point about like the Pelicans.
Yes. Okay. I can hear you now.
The Pelicans have Zion, a top 5 pick,
Uh-huh.
being really great. But that's like iffy. And some teams could be on fraud alerts, like Memphis, as well. But they
Why are
have a
they on
really
fraud
good
alert? I mean, they have a defensive player of the year who's 24 years old, I think, in Jaren Jackson Jr. They have a bevy of young players coming up who are really good prospects. Like I think David Roddy, Kenny Lofton, Conchard. These are good rotation players in the NBA. Like at minimum, they will
okay.
be good guys. And then they have Desmond Bain and John Morant. Like I can't think of a better backcourt in the NBA than that. Off the top of my head. Like, they're dynamic, they fit, they work. And regardless whether you like them or hate them, they have Dylan Brooks. I don't know. They
If
have
you take
something.
out if you take out Jaren Jackson, I would say it's a bit iffy.
Okay.
But that
Would you
makes
take
it
Jaren
curious. You
Jackson
think
over
why?
Pascal Siakam?
Hmm?
Would you take Jaren Jackson over Pascal Siakam?
No, I think he's great. That's what I'm saying. The Jaren
Okay.
Jackson is that great that it makes me say, you know what, I'm gonna have to back off on my Memphis fraud alert.
Yeah, and I mean, like, look, when Ja Morant went out, I think Jaren Jackson showed you who he can be, right? He was great, like the numbers he was putting up, and you saw all that lost potential of the scoring and everything that he was
Yeah.
supposed to be coming into the draft, and it's like, holy shit, like this guy's a legit all star, like a real all star. Like I was obviously pushing for him to all star because I love his game and I love him as a player, but to see expanded role on offense, him taking a diet of 22, 23 shots, yeah, he's way better than Pascal Siakam, man. Way
He's
better.
he's very good. Perhaps he's hidden because of the good offense he has around him. That's why.
There's a lot
Possibly.
of shot takers, at every one possession, one guy can take a shot, and then four guys have to watch them take a shot, and
Another
some.
team. Another team, Orlando. Do you put them above Toronto?
So that's
I
the
don't.
thing. Like I don't, because I don't like Paolo the same way that maybe a lot of other people do. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong about him every step of the way. I would have taken Jabari over him. I would have been wrong about that for sure. So far at least. I mean, he's massively outperformed Jabari Smith. But I have a bit of a blind spot towards guys who don't play defense so well, don't have like hugely plus wingspans. I think he's got a plus wingspan, but it's not hugely plus. I don't love the way he moves sometimes. But he's a great, like he's physically very developed, like for his age, like he's insanely developed for his age. And I think that has a lot to do with how he's been able to come into the NBA season, like kind of like what Scotty did. But if you cross reference Scotty's rookie season to Paolo's rookie season, there's such a massive gap in terms of how these two players analytically impacted winning. Like it's night and day. Scotty was so much better. But because Paolo averaged 20 points per game, everyone's gassing him up like he's a superstar. And it's like he wouldn't be the first, right? I
The same
think
instinct there.
his season, it was like,
I would take J-Dub over him, but that's just me. I don't know why. But anyways,
oh, there's no way this is real.
am I wrong?
Hold
What?
on. What? No way. Get out of here. That's not you. Fred VanVleet. That's not real Fred VanVleet. What's up?
Is it
That's
the real
hilarious.
Fred?
That's funny. Yo, this is wild. Am I the mattress?
Yeah, the mattress. What? Is that it?
Yo, you never know.
The Raptors locker
Yes,
room.
anger. Yo, like it's anger issues resolved.
Yo,
Kicking
I'm
the
scared.
mattress.
I'm scared for my life now, man.
This is a grown ass man on a Friday.
Fred. I don't know if you're mad at me or you're mad at the Raptors contract sheet that they're not giving you right now, man. But
Yo, okay.
yo, all right. Thanks a lot, Fred VanVleet, for coming on, man. I appreciate it. Oh no.
Thanks a lot.
Oh no.
Don't break the screen though.
Is he gonna? Is it gonna be like one of those Hadouken situations? Like,
It's gonna be a Kamehameha. All right.
thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you so much. Thanks a lot for coming on and doing that. And we just,
But yeah, they could actually get Orlando.
he's just gonna keep going. Yo, we gotta make this guy bigger, man. This is funny. This is funny. People, we're not giving him enough credit right now. Ah, Fred, where'd he go? Oh no, we lost him. We lost Fred. Oh, that's too bad. That was funny. I mean, honestly, so it was kind of strange. Y'all know, like I've mentioned a few times on these lives that I've had some contact with the people in his life, all right? And we've talked very recently. We've talked, like his cousin and people, like, and these conversations are getting a little less hostile, which I really appreciate, and I'm very thankful for that. Like I've managed to like cool myself a little bit and not be so much of an asshole in these conversations. I'm getting the feeling he wants to stay. Getting that feeling. Getting the feeling he really wants to stay.
Yeah.
What do you think about like the role he would play on offense, for example?
Who?
I think in the playoffs, when he was like playing off ball, it really worked. But the way he didn't do that through the regular season, we don't really know. By the way, my mic is still working or not? Right.
Yeah, your mic's still working, man.
So I don't really know.
I think he
Yeah.
should be a chance if he resigns. I think everyone should just like clean slate, give him a chance. And if something changes in his play style positively, I'm not saying sing his praises right away, but accept that he's changed. And it was just him trying to get a contract. But if nothing changes, I want him dealt by the trade deadline next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you sign him to a 3 to 4 year deal, I think you'll find someone out there who might be, feeling themselves as a bit of a contender, who could see him. Like, I don't think he has negative value, and I don't think you should take that. The other thing that I think is a little bit underrated, which I don't think we've ever talked about in this channel, is the Raptors may not have been willing to trade him to certain situations last year. So we heard about the Clippers trade that didn't happen. We heard about the Bucks thing that didn't happen, right? And I think in both of those situations, he would have been a starter.
Yeah.
Right? The Bucks, like he would have started probably him and Drew in the backcourt, Chris Middleton, Brooke, Giannis, right? That would have been their starting lineup. I think he would have replaced Grayson Allen or whoever the hell is, Pat Connaughton, whoever's starting for them at 2. With the Clippers, he obviously would have started. And with the Lakers, he would have started. However, outside of those markets, there may not have been a lot of places where they were willing to trade him because of his contract situation. Namely, 2 types of teams. Number one, teams that were too bad for him to, turn around, and maybe like it would have kind of hurt him, and maybe sending him there might have hurt the team's reputation with him or with his agent or with other players around the league. You just don't want another PR nightmare like the DeMar DeRozan traded you for a bag of nothing, situation.
Yeah.
And I think the second part is you may not have wanted to trade him to a situation where his numbers were surely going to tank because he was coming off the bench. So would a team like in Atlanta have given you something like Bogdanovich for him? Maybe. But there's not a chance in hell he's starting over Trey or DeJounte Murray. And he's not starting with them either. And so that situation, you can't even approach that situation because you can't send him to be the third guard off of someone's bench. And there's so many teams that are set in the backcourt. Consider the Boston Celtics. Could the Boston Celtics have used him? Would they have given you a Derek White? Maybe, but he's not starting over Jaylen Brown Jason Tatum or Marcus Smart. So you're sending him to the bench. And I think maybe with his, and I think that, if Terrence Mann and a first round pick was what you wanted, I think it's because you were only exploring offers in which you could satisfy his requirements for a trade as well. I don't think that those requirements will be as stringent this time around if you want to trade him at the deadline. I think it'll be more of a, hey, we understand this may not work out. We're going to give you the 4-year option because we're going to give you the 4-year deal because that's what you want right now. But just please be on notice that if this doesn't work out, we're going to try to trade you at the deadline, and we're just going to move you to a place. You know what I mean?
That can work. That can work for sure.
Yeah.
What really is surprising me is that you got to have a pretty good conversation with his side of the situation, and kudos to you for that. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, it started out on a very bumpy foot. It was starting out with like me being called all sorts of things, and then and me responding very poorly, and I'm happy that can be the case as well. But ultimately, I've asked them to come on. I've asked them to come on. It was an open sort of thing. I was like, man, we'll pull like 20,000 views very easily. Just come on and have a conversation with me about this. About Fred VanVleet, and if you think I'm wrong about him, let me know why you think I'm wrong about him. I don't hate the guy. I genuinely hate the way he played this year, but I don't hate him. I have a lot of respect for him, probably more than anyone thinks I do, right? Because look, like I like underdogs. I genuinely do. I like people who try hard. I like people who work hard. I like people who believe in themselves. I like people who work hard, for their dreams.
Do you think he could really fit with a new coach? I think, yeah. You know what? He's got a lot of respect around the league, and he's got a lot of respect because of his achievements. A lot of the fan base really love him, and a lot of people are defending him through the whole season because he really did a lot for the team as well through the years.
Yeah.
So maybe like a new coach could be a interesting thing.
I really think so. I think sometimes new coaches can definitely change roles. They can change the messaging. They can put people on high alert. Like one of the most underrated parts about changing the coaching staff is it suddenly presents a new wave of motivation and opportunity for a lot of guys, right? Like if you're a Delano Banton or a Joe Wieskamp or a Jeff Doughton, there's a new person that you have to impress. That could put you on it can either crater you or it can put you on like very high alert. Like it can make you put in like the greatest offseason ever because you're like, hey, I actually have a chance next year to be a rotation player because this guy who already kind of buried me isn't there anymore. Yeah. So if you're one of those people who feels like Nick Nurse was stifling you, this is a prove it season for you to prove that he was actually the problem and you weren't the problem. I think it's a pretty bold move when your franchise fires one of, arguably and definitely one of the top 10 coaches in the NBA because he's worn out his welcome with the roster. And I don't doubt that he wore out his welcome with the roster, that his message was stale, that he was burned out and all that stuff, but he's still a hell of a coach, right? He's not like, he didn't just forget how to coach. Like he's a really good coach and he will do well somewhere, provided he's not, blinded by the same things he was blinded by here. But I genuinely believe like if you're a Scotty Barnes or you're a Precious Achua or someone who struggled last year and you've been complaining about this offense, well, you got to be seeing bright colors right now. You can be like, wow, like it could be a very motivating thing. And, internal competition is good. And I would like to really see this team come in to training camp with a new face. I think one of the underrated things about hiring someone earlier rather than later, waiting too long, and I obviously like them to hire the right person, but I don't want them to wait too long because that person has to start having these meetings and establishing these relationships very soon. Like they need to start having those meetings with these players, letting them know what they need from them, what they've seen from them, what their role is going to be next year. Because look, if you're a Pascal Siakam and the new coach sees you as a 3-point shooter, like a spacer, like the only way our offense is going to work is going to shoot threes. Get in the gym right now and start shooting threes. Like all the time. Don't work on anything else. Just shoot threes. Yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming on, man. Any final thoughts, Lane or NSN?
You can go, man, if you want to.
You got anything? Well, I'll go first. I watched some Mike Brown videos about what he did when he came to Sacramento, and the first thing he did was just kind of try to connect with the guys, trying to see how they connect well as a team, as a group. And so,
did you know about the role contracts? Did you hear about the role contracts?
Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that too. It's interesting. I really was trying to make a propaganda about that because I really think it would be interesting for us. Uh, but yeah, but first and foremost, what I really believe in is that thing that happened with Domantas Sabonis and him going to have some wine, drink wine with the guys, and also get together. And
That's
also,
right out of the Popovich playbook, by the way. Having wine, having dinner, etc. Like that's totally out of their playbook. The
Masai would
Spurs.
love this. Masai would love this. The whole togetherness stuff. That's I think what Masai has really been wanting. So yeah, that's that.
Becky Hammon is the same way. Like when she's talking about that stuff, it's the same stuff. She had a quote which really stuck with me. It was a few years ago. I was listening to her, and she said this thing. She said, "I like to tell players exactly what I expect from them on a night-to-night basis because it gives me the basis to hold them accountable." So we agree together. We say, okay, well, you're going to go out and you're going to be the best rebounder on the court every time, right? You're on the floor. And that means that if you get out rebounded, if you're not the best rebounder on the court, you have failed, right? And that's a very simple thing. You streamline the thought process from, oh, go out and help us win or go out and help us play defense. No, you need to be the best defender. You need to win your matchup. You need to take every open shot. You know, like these types of things. I think they can really simplify a player's approach to the game every night. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm coming in for Precious Achua. You know, I want you to go out and guard and wreak havoc on defense.
Yeah.
Like that's just what I want you to do. Scotty Barnes, I want you to take every shot that is made available to you. That's literally your job. Like I want you to take every single shot that's available to you. When the defense sags off, I need you to hit that shot. If you don't hit that shot, and like if you have an issue with that right now, you're telling me like I don't want to play that way, then you let me know and we'll adjust your role. But if you don't tell me you have an issue with it right now, well then now when you don't do it, I can be like, Scotty, remember what we talked about? You're not doing it. That's the accountability element of coaching. And interestingly enough, Lane, I think you'll be the perfect person to close this off since you are a coach.
Yeah. I think one thing a coaching change can do, especially in professional sports, is separate the frauds. Honestly, I mean, if you want me to be very, very frank with you, if Delano Band, Malachi Flynn, Precious Achua feel like they were misused in the last offense or defense or whatever last scheme system,
100%.
then if we bring in a new coach and it's looking more the same from them, then I mean, a broken clock is only right twice a day, and maybe they're broken clocks. They only have two good games out of every 20 or something like that, you know.
Sure.
And I really think that that's something that I'm looking forward to, is to see which guys improve, which guys don't, because a change of scenery is great, and a change of a coaching staff is great. But if something remains constant and something remains the same, maybe it's not the scheme, maybe it's the player.
All right.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
You guys.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. I fully agree with what Lane was saying there for sure. To answer this question here, what happened with Thad and Scotty behind the scenes? Why was Thad so buddy-buddy with Fred? Good question. To the second question, I don't have an answer to why Thad and Fred were so buddy-buddy, but a couple of the team meetings this year were called by Pascal Siakam, Thaddeus Young, and Fred VanVleet. And so it feels to me that those three were very pro-coach, like pro one side. It seemed like they were always together. They always talked, etc. The Thad and Scotty thing, if you listen to them say it, the exact situation of events, and I've gone in and I've tried to get someone to open up about it. I haven't gotten many details about what specifically it was about, but it was, you know, what came out around the time was, I'm just trying to get you ready. I'm trying to get you ready. And then Scotty basically saying like, I'm going to get ready how I want to get ready. And look, as someone who came to a couple of games, who went to a few games this year, I can tell you that, you know, for instance, like there was a situation where all the players came out and shot around, and maybe Scotty was late to that. Like he came out last. He came out like basically right before the game started. And so maybe it was something as simple as a dispute over like, hey, stop talking while you're shooting. And Scotty's like, go fuck yourself, right? I don't know. But it seemed to be ironed out afterwards. From what I understand, Scotty gave him, you know, said, I love you after, like, don't worry about it. I love you. He said, you know, very, very Honestly, at the post game when he was asked about it, he said, "That's my guy. Thad's my guy." So there was probably no hostility after that. We didn't see any blow-ups. We didn't see any rumors, anything after that. But yes, I will agree with you, and I'm glad that you noticed it too, that Thad and Fred seem to be a pretty package deal after that. It's interesting always to know who's close to who. Birds of a feather flock together. Typically speaking, if you have a really big issue with the way the guy is playing, and you're, genuinely a catalyst for ball movement, and your best friend is like the one person who's disrupting ball movement, I find that usually very hard to believe. 100%. Like, look, like I think Masai Ujiri is not someone who's just going to bang his head against the wall and try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Hopefully, he does it for a little while, but he will eventually adjust. If Scotty Barnes comes out next year and averages 15 points per game, yes, you absolutely have to look at his upside and reevaluate what you have there, because he hasn't been an elite defender, right? He's been really good at times, really not so good at times. He's had issues. He's been kind of a generalist, right? And so, look, if you're building something around somebody and they project to be more of a Kyle Anderson, Lamar Odom, Boris Diaw type, as opposed to a Giannis Kawhi type, you want to figure that out pretty early, just so you know what you have. Because it's very easy to, fall in love with a young player. Look, he works too hard. He wants us too much. I'm going to keep spewing it over and over again. He creates too much space. There's too many gifts, and the track record speaks for itself. He's grown a lot, and I just think with where his skills are at, like the fact that he's even in the NBA with some of his scoring skills is pretty incredible. The fact that he managed to be a top 5 pick is just purely on who he is as a person, the work he's putting in, his work ethic, his potential, all that stuff. I don't think you've seen 40% of what he can do. I think in terms of who is the furthest player on this team from their eventual upside, I think Scotty Barnes is the furthest player on this team from his eventual upside. Further than Fred, further than Fred and Jakob and Pascal, but further than OG, further than Malachi, further than Christian Koloko, further than Precious, further than everybody. Because his upside truly does project to like superstar. Like, it's not 2-time All-Star, 1-time All-Star. Like, he has all the gifts, cerebral gifts, to be that type of, franchise changer. And it's going to be up to the next coach to unlock it. It's going to be up to him to put in the work in the offseason to get himself, into a position where he can take a lot of the shots that he passed up this year. But again, I don't think the issue is the work. I don't think the issue has ever been the work. I don't think the issue is him cheating the game. I don't think the issue is desire. Like, you don't put up fourth quarters like that and dominant outbursts like that if you're not serious about basketball, Like, I see his competitive spirit. I do. I also see his gaps and his inconsistencies. I don't think there's a chance in hell that he's going to regress or whatever. I don't know. I think you might be overestimating Pascal Siakam, man. Jalen Green, I don't think so, man. That's a lot. That's a lot to give up for Pascal Siakam. But I see where you're coming with that too. I don't think so. I think if they make that trade, they'll probably make it for Jaylen Brown. I think they have their eyes set on Jaylen Brown. But would you guys do a Jaylen Brown for Pascal Siakam swap? Would that kind of help both teams in a lot of ways, especially if Jaylen Brown feels like he's being disrespected and he doesn't have enough shots or whatever? I think Jaylen Brown and Scotty Barnes would be such a interesting pairing. Like, imagine a backcourt. Imagine a 1-2-3, a starting 1-2-3 of Scotty, Jaylen Brown, OG Anunoby. Holy shit, that would be amazing. Yeah. Like, if we had picks to add to it, I probably would make a pick. Because it's not like Jaylen Brown is like he's not like a top 10 player. He's not really even close to Jason Tatum. I just think that his skill set and his fit, it just fits so well. And ironically, I think Siakam could fit on I think Siakam could fit really well in Boston as well. I don't know. I don't know why he wouldn't. But I've heard from some people that he wouldn't. But I mean, They fired the coach. They spent a good part of the season giving Scotty good point man minutes. Next year, Scotty might play 50% point or more. Who knows? Clean slate. Yeah, and that's why I would really love to see a coach who really understands the point guard position, which is again why I'm kind of pro Becky. Anyways, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to anyone who sent a super chat. If I missed it, I see 5 private messages here. Oh, it's from NSN. Never mind. Anyways, and yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for indulging me on my 2-minute rant about the Pandance Film Festival. It does mean a lot to me. I've put a lot of my heart and soul into these lives and, into Pantera basketball. And to be honest, I'm a little bit behind with the Pandance stuff. So here's my humble, kind request to you. If you have, an inkling to want to check out some cinema or whatever, you want to reach out to me on Instagram, you can't afford tickets, send me an inquiry. I'll probably gift you a ticket or something. But what would be really helpful is if you could actually tell people who are interested in movies about it. We don't have a huge ad budget this year. We're just kind of getting back on our feet right now. 6th year. It's about 30 films. So word of mouth helps. So if you know people who are in the cinema world, if you know people who are into movies, if you have a free evening, come check it out. Meet me in person. It'll be fun. All right, guys. Take care. Have a great one, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.